Now, Washington Mornings on the Mall. 105.9 FM. And AM 630. WMAL.
8:36 on WMAL. Brian Eman, Brian Wilson with you. Big win last night for Mitt Romney in Wisconsin, also in Maryland and D.C. as he inches closer and closer to that 1144 mark. Can he even get there? That's also still a question. Republican National Committee Chairman REINCE Priebus is with us. Good morning, REINCE. How are you?
Hey, good morning to you. How are you?
Well, you know, we are here in D.C., got the vote yesterday. Well, I think there was a whopping 4,982 people that voted in the District of Columbia yesterday. No, not a whole lot of Republicans in the city, but just overall your general feeling for what happened yesterday, especially for the big wins for Mitt Romney.
Well, I mean, obviously it was a good night for Governor Romney. I mean, I know I'm to be neutral, but I also don't have to be dumb to the facts either, and the facts are is that he had a good night, and I think the Republican Party had a good night, and especially out in Wisconsin. You know, I'm one of those cheeseheads that you all have to put up with and listen about, but I will tell you, you know, voter turnout was up in Wisconsin. Probably didn't hear that. The media only likes to talk about when our voter turnout is down, but you know, to have voter turnout in our primary greater than the turnout in 2008. Now, Wisconsin in 2008 went in February, and Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama were still in the thick of things. And so we actually had more voters yesterday than the entire primary 4 years ago, with both sides going to the polls. So that's a big night. And, you know, Wisconsin's been at the epicenter of this country politically, and I think anytime you can win a state like that, it's a big deal.
All right, so let me ask you a question. You say you're supposed to remain neutral in all this, and I respect that. I absolutely do. But you got a situation right now where Newt Gingrich, he's sort of put his campaign sort of in mothballs. It's still there, but it's not much. And Ron Paul, he's staying in on principle, but he's not really a factor in the race right now. But you got Rick Santorum, who says he's going to fight it to the bitter end. And as I look at the statistics, he's won 26% of the delegates, and he needs 80% of the remaining delegates to win. At some point, it becomes almost mathematically impossible for him to go forward. Is there some point in which you, as chairman of the GOP, might go to Senator Santorum and say, you fought the good fight, but it's time to get behind the inevitable nominee here?
Well, I do think that you'll see more of those sorts of calls, you know, today and through the week and maybe next week and the week after. So, you know, that pressure kind of brings itself on automatically. I mean, certainly you don't need me out there saying
Well, but you're the chairman of the party, sir.
Right. Well, here's the problem. The chairman of the party sometimes is the worst person to have out there saying that this is what we need to do, because I think a lot of people actually resent the fact that you've got party folks from Washington telling them what to do. Now, I have said, and I've said very clearly, that I think whoever wins Wisconsin is going to have some serious bragging rights. I also would agree with you that at some point, if something is not mathematically possible, that someone ought to, you know, candidates need to look at what's best for this country, not what might be best for them individually.
Well,
so
fair enough, but
I've been there. You know, I'm as close to the edge as I think a party chairman ought to be at this very moment. But I can't sit here and argue with you over your point, because I think you make a good one.
Well, I mean, when you get to the point where you need 80% of the remaining delegates, at what point does it become mathematically impossible? That, to me, at least the way I do math, seems mathematically impossible.
Right, and logical, reasonable people like you say those things, and they'll continue, and that in and of itself, along with other folks in the party, create, I think, a lot of pressure to go in the direction that you're suggesting. But, you know, at this point, I think I've kind of taken, I'm taking everything is I think in stride, but I'm also trying to be cognizant of the fact of my role, and be responsible, as you suggest, as well.
Where do you think the enthusiasm is if Romney is the nominee when it comes to the base and also generating money? Do you feel like there will be a difference in that enthusiasm and in the ability to earn money if it's Romney as the nominee versus whoever it could possibly be?
No, I think on the money side, we're not gonna be short of cash. I mean, we've already shown that, I think, at the national level, at the RNC versus the DNC. I mean, we've got more cash in the bank than the Democratic National Committee. It's probably not a story you hear a lot about, but we actually have more than they do. And it's just because I think, number one, people do feel like this is not an election about the party, but an election about America. I think major donors are going to be excited in regard to our nominee. And we're going to be entering into joint fundraising agreements and victory programs as we have in the past. And right now our intention is to do much better than we did in the 04 re-elect, which I think some people might remember. The 04 re-elect was the most money the Republican Party has ever raised in an election, and we just have to do much better than that. So I think we're well on our way.
Obamacare has become an issue, of course, before the Supreme Court. And just the other day, the president was out sort of after the case was closed and gone to deliberations, out making the case that it would be unprecedented for the Supreme Court to do what, as I understand it, the Supreme Court's supposed to do, which is rule on whether or not laws are constitutional. Do you have any thoughts about that comment that he made the other day?
Yeah, I think he ought to go back to his law school days and review the Bill of Rights and get familiar with James Madison and his thoughts, and which constitute the very idea of the separation of powers, the 10th Amendment, which is exactly what the issue is here before the court. So, I mean, what the court is doing is reviewing the law that was created by the legislature to determine whether or not it's in violation of the most fundamental constitutional principles that have been in place in our country. So, any first-year law student, or for that matter, any high school student, can figure out that this is just a fundamental question of constitutional law, not a question of activist judges, which I think is laughable. It is an incredible skill, though. I mean, I don't know if it's a skill of stretching the truth or not facing reality and being able to do it with a straight face or what it is, but you look at what he did yesterday with Paul Ryan, which was another joke, which is, I'm going to call on the carpet the guy that actually had the guts to put something in paper that says, here's how we're going to get our 10-year debt window and spending problem under control. But the criticism is coming from a president who's supposed to lead this country in the free world and hasn't proposed a budget that's received a single Democratic vote in how many years? 3 years, is it? I mean, we've all lost count. I mean, it's just so hypocritical. But, we're just going to have to be better and better communicators, and we have to get out there, and we all have to be on the same page. I will say getting a Republican nominee in that regard, and I don't think that a long primary is bad, but I do think in this regard it's helpful to have a nominee because going toe-to-toe with the president requires a pretty big stick, and you can't shoot with 22s. You have to have a pretty big club, and having a nominee is someone that can go toe-to-toe with the president in the media, and that's important.
All right, that Media Matters will pick up on that violent rhetoric that you just had on the radio.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm from Wisconsin, and, we don't view that as violent.
All right, Reince, it was great to have you on. Thanks very much. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you.